Bloodcovered, I'm sure you all are wondering how good the sequel of Bloodcovered did. Spoiler alert, it did fucking awful. That's not saying it's bad per se, but I'm saying that it did much worse than Blood Drive altogether. Book of Shadows, the next game, is by far a very disappointing sequel. Not only doing a what if scenario, basically, and basically there's no point of buying this game. As now, once again, I say this game is not particularly bad. There's just no point in this game whatsoever. Now, I will give this game credit that it is, and for the most part, the scariest out of all the Corpse Party games, mainly because it goes into a first-person point-and-click game instead of using the RPG element like last time. But there is a lot of unnecessary things to put in this game. At least 45% of this game has nothing to do with the Heavenly Host School whatsoever, and leaves nothing really good to say about it. But whenever you're in Heavenly Host, it's actually very good. But there's a lot of very unnecessary scenes in this episode. The shower scene in chapter 1. Yeah, and that's only one of the most stupidest things you'll see in this entire game. Hell, I'd say it's about almost an hour until you actually get into the school. In fact, chapter 1 is probably one of the lower ends of the whole entire game, but also kind of good at the same time. I was definitely shocked at the ending. Also, I'm going to be talking about who actually killed Seiko and the ending in chapter 1, because if you guys are idiots and didn't listen to me when I said watch the whole game so I don't have to spoil what actually happened to Seiko, then you guys are just asking for me to just tell you guys. So I will in this review, I guess. I will say, though, this game does tie a lot of loose ends, particularly in the bad endings. Basically, in one of the bad endings in the Corpse Party Blood Drive, this is actually the start of Corpse Party Book of Shadows. So basically, you're playing the game of a wrong ending, which is actually kind of interesting now that I think about it. But finally, I've made it to the school, taking me, as I said, about an hour. And I will be honest, this game is very weird at times. I'm not sure if I already pointed that out, but this game gets weird. But yeah, as I said, the gameplay is actually kind of good, but it's also kind of bad. Basically, it depends on what setting you're in. If you're in a horroristic setting where you're getting chased by something, and just a character pops up, then yeah, it's scary. But if you're in the beginning of the chapter and you're just exploring, it's not really that enticing. That's not saying it doesn't have its moments, but it definitely does feel like a downgrade in Corpse Party Bloodcovered. Also, if I keep mistaking Bloodcovered for Blood Drive, that's because there's another game called Blood Drive that I have to review next time, so maybe that's why. Speaking of Blood Drive, the only reason Book of Shadows exists is to probably amp up Blood Drive, which is clearly a stupid thing to do, because only one chapter does this. So basically, you could have put the one chapter in the Corpse Party Blood-covered extra chapters, and no one would care. I will say that this is more of a visual audio game, and I will say it's a pretty good visual audio game at that. They really make you visualize the stuff that happens in some of the bad endings in this. It's very descriptive and very just horrific in general. Now, unlike where most chapters usually take about an hour to complete in Bloodcovered, This will take about 2 hours to 3 hours. Yeah, it's a pretty long. And I can kind of see why they did that, because they put at least 10 more bad endings than Bloodcovered had. I'll give the game some more credit where credit's due. They kind of made the health bar better, where instead of it being an actual health bar where you take damage, it's more of a darkening scale. Basically, in the game, you can get some kind of basic disease called the darkening, where you basically turn and you kind of go psychotic, basically. That's kind of what Naomi did once, and I'll explain more I'll explain more later. Oh yeah, and the Sachiko is still a scary little piece of shit. Oh yeah, one of the scenes in this game you can also have some more character scenes with Seiko. However, it's not much. I kind of wish that they could give more credit to Seiko, because realistically, you don't actually do much with her in anything in the game, in any game series really. You only have her in as as in one chapter in Bloodcover, and just a little bit in Book of Shadows. So realistically, this doesn't matter that much. But yeah, as I said, this game is a visual audio most of the time. And the reason I'm not talking about the main things in Chapter 1 is because not much happens here that is worth mentioning. It's basically just Chapter 1 of of Bloodcovered, but with more descriptions happening. Basically, it filled in the gap for what happened in between Seiko and Naomi separating to Naomi finding Seiko dead. And most of the time, it doesn't really even do that. It just talks about some of Naomi's past memories, especially where she got her cat, which I found very pointless. I can understand if you find some of these scenes good, because, I mean, in fairness, they do raise an emotional scale some of the time. But still, a lot of unnecessary scenes in this game as a whole. But yeah, this game alone can do scary stuff. It's just that some of the time it just does a lot of weird stuff. Especially in the third and fourth chapter, nothing happens. But finally, I reached the chapter 1 ending, and let me tell you, it is kind of surprising. Basically, I'll tell you this. Naomi was absorbed by the darkening for momentarily, and doing that, she killed Seiko. That is basically the gist of what happened. Naomi didn't know she killed Seiko until the end of the game. And what happens in this ending is kind of scary. In this ending, instead of Seiko dying of being hung, she dies decapitated. And I probably should have pointed this out, there's piano wires in this game, and if you touch them, you're gonna bleed a lot, because they're sharp. And Seiko had no idea that there was a piano wire there and accidentally ran into it. Yeah, one idiot. Moving on to chapter 2, which is by far the most hated game out of the hated chapter of this whole game. And while I can understand why, because if you don't pick up this one item in one specific room, you automatically get. So I can see why you wouldn't like it. However, I do like this this chapter kind of. It talks about some of the new characters and what their stories are. And plus, the bad endings, in fairness, are very amazing. In fact, if I had to rank this chapter from all the whole Corpse Party chapters, it'd probably be fourth or third. because some of the bad endings are very scary. The ending, the true ending of this chapter, is very scary. And overall, just a very scary chapter. Also, some of the unnecessary stuff in this chapter. There isn't much unnecessary stuff in this chapter, at least pertaining to what happens in this chapter. Also, you play as Mayu, which is one of the dead characters from the last game. In fact, you can play as all of the dead characters from the last game, except Seiko for some reason. I know some people would say, but Andrew, Seiko's death was the most emotional out of all of them. So, it's still a death, and all of them should be taken the same way because all of them died. Why doesn't Seiko get the same treatment? Why couldn't we see Seiko's perspective of what happened when she saw Naomi about to strangle her? Like, that would have been an amazing for the filling in the gaps of this game, which is the whole purpose of this game. So why didn't they make a scene specifically on that? This chapter is basically the same as chapter 2 and Blood Covered, where basically you're just looking for other survivors instead of looking for one specific person like the whole part one. And as I said, this is very scary. Even having at least one unnecessary moment, and even I'd say that's kind of unnecessary, just a little bit. As I said, the bad endings in this game are completely horrifying. And some of the stuff in this, and some of the scenes in the true ending are actually also very scary. And then we see Naho again, but I'm not going to talk about her twist in the story until chapter 4, where basically we get the most information on Naho. Unlike most of the games most of the chapters in this game and the previous game, instead of having a maximum of 2 people in your party, you can have a maximum of 4 people in your party in this chapter, which kind of made me feel invincible until the ending. While me and Yoshiki are trying to find Ayumi, we run into Nana. Someone help me out here, please. Nana is from an elementary school. And when it comes to surviving, she doesn't have a leg to stand on. You'll get the joke later. Also, I just want to say how similar the 2 names of Nana's friends are. Nari and Shinana. Yeah. But yeah, Nana is kind of an actually very likable character, and a little bit of a waifu. And then I decide to go into a hole filled with all other people, because that doesn't sound homosexual at all. But yeah, it is kind of a scary room to actually be in, if I'm being honest. As I said, the gameplay can differ from very good to very bad. And scenes like this make the game very good because, it's a first-person visual, so you can actually see what's going on here. But yeah, as I said, this game in general is scary, and when finding Ayumi, I feel invincible because I have a party of 4 in the game, and I don't feel like I'm gonna die. But 4 of us decide to take a nap in this sacred school of hell for some reason. And then Nana, being the idiot she is, decides to take a piss into a different located room. Yoshiki, being the smartest one, makes me go and to check and to be with her because separation is a bullshit thing to do. But yeah, the joke I made with the leg, basically Nana gets her leg cut off because she's an idiot and decided to split up because, splitting up is the stupidest thing you can ever do in horror tropes. I don't care if you're about to fucking piss all over yourself. If I was in the group they were in, I would not let them split up. And I would probably die if I was in the same position they were in, like, probably immediately. But, yeah, weird scene happens in the ending where, Mayu realizes that, that Nana died by getting cut from her bruises, and because Mayu has bruises, she's gonna die as well. Which I don't really understand. What if that was just a coincidence? What if it was just to be funny? I mean, it wouldn't be the last time that that Sachiko's been being funny. And then in the ending, Mayu gets torn apart. So yeah, that was a very freaky ending. Next we reach chapter 3, which is by far the worst out of all these chapters. And the main reason for that is because it takes no part into the Heavenly Host world. I mean, I'm fine with showing us the real world for a majority of the bit, but when it has barely anything to do with the story, with the main story itself, I don't realistically care all that much. Basically, you play as Miss Yui in this chapter, another dead character, but this time, instead of it taking place in the Heavenly Host School, it's taking place in the real school, which is also haunted for some reason. Now, this game was about filling in the gaps. So what was the whole point of this chapter? It means nothing. Miss Yui out of all of them was probably the least attached to this whole entire school, because basically it's tough to explain, but basically, I mean, any of the other backstories would have worked well. Like Seiko, she had to take care of 4 siblings. Mayu, she's moving. Morishige's a effed up man. Miss Yui, I could care less about. And another time, Miss Yui tries to have sex with Satoshi because she is a registered sex offender. Also, Satoshi, he is barely in this game in general. And he was the main character in last game, and I've heard he wasn't in this. I've heard Naomi and Ayumi were the main characters in this game, even though both of them are only in 2 chapters. So basically, this whole chapter is about Miss Yui contemplating her life decisions of how she could have gotten boned by a man for a good amount of years instead of being a teacher, and she's a teacher. Yeah, so. Well, not even a teacher. She's a teacher's assistant, so. But the teacher she assists does literally nothing as a teacher, so she is a teacher, but not registered. I don't fucking know. And while I may seem dead my voice may seem dead right now, it's basically because of how boring this chapter is. Even the haunted scenes, they kind of bored me, because I'm like, why is it haunted? We never got a very good explanation on why it was haunted. It's just a scare trope, and the scare trope is awful. It's stupid. It makes no sense. But I guess it could be worse. This could be game that is about literally nothing horrific in this entire chapter. So I guess at least I'll give them points that they tried. But then again, trying can only get you so far if you don't succeed. Now, so the only thing I liked about this chapter is when an old woman came and, she warned Miss Yui. I found that a very scary thing. Like, it's very scary. She's scared. Like, she's actually, it's a very scary scene. Like, honestly, but if the only thing I like about this chapter is like one scene that also has its flaws, then then you can tell how bad this chapter is. Basically, this woman warns Miss Yui not to go to her school at night, and again, why would you? Speaking of which, let me tell you all the main fucking reason Miss Yui goes back to the haunted school. Like, listen to this. This is absolutely amazing, guys. You have no clue what I'm about to tell you guys, and it is going to make you hate this game so much. Okay, are you ready? Are you ready? The main reason Miss Yui came back to the haunted school at nighttime, and it's haunted at nighttime, is because she forgot a pencil that her crush gave her. So basically, she's going back because she wants some D. But as I say, this chapter's entirely pointless. I mean, like, I could at least say for the other chapters that I didn't like, that at least they're connected to the Heavenly Host story. I mean, at least I could relatively understand what's happening. For this one, not only is it boring, but it doesn't matter. It's the main point in this game in general. But yeah, it takes about an hour for something quote unquote scary to actually happen. And it takes a long time until we actually see something even 2% related to Heavenly Host. And trust me, this game, the ending isn't really even 5% related to Heavenly Host. So yeah. Playing this playing this chapter is like listening to my ex-girlfriend. Why the hell would I want to do that? It makes no sense. I see no point in it. It's just the dullest thing ever in human history. But yeah, the main reason she went and risked herself dying from some ghosts is because of a stupid little lucky pencil. What a buffoon. What a moron. What an absolute tripod. She is a literal idiot. She's the dumbest character out of all these nine, and she's supposed to be the oldest. What a Nimrod. And before you guys tell me that this is from her crush, so she should cherish it and like it because this is something that her crush gave her, to that I say, is it really worth risking your life to do that? Like, if my crush gave me something, I would like it and appreciate it. But if I accidentally left it at school, which 10 times 9, which 10 out of 10 doctors say I wouldn't, then, and the school's haunted at night, and the only time I could go back to the school was at night, then why the actual hell would I do that? I don't see any point of you doing that except keeping the gift. Like, think about it. If you don't go, you don't risk your life. You don't risk your whole entire. You don't risk your family going insane from knowing that you're dead, and you don't get PTSD from what happened. But that seems like more pros and cons. The only thing I can say that is kind of good about this also is the bad endings, but I can't even call them scary. They're just kind of hilarious. Like, here's one of the bad endings where, like, she gets impaled by her own lucky pencil that her crush gave her. That is the most funniest, ironic thing I've ever heard and seen in my entire freaking life. Yeah, but basically Sachiko's killed mom was there also. And yes, I know I didn't answer why went insane and all that. Because I didn't want to spoil the story from you, because I wanted you guys to see it. And I'm not spoiling it anytime now, because the whole story up and after Blood Covered is a whole entire mess. The only thing that I could say that's also scary about this is the headphone audio. For some reason, they decide to have one of the audio of Sachiko's mom's voice in one side of the headphone, which is scary as shit. But if the only like 100% scary thing in this whole entire chapter is what they do with the headphones, that seems like they tried so much on one thing that they didn't even try to understand what they were doing about all the others. I can't even say that that Sachiko's mom's figure is kind of scary. It's not. It's only just annoying because she's supposed to have a crooked neck, and she doesn't. But I mean, this 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 chapter itself is very much pointless and unnecessary. But I guess I shouldn't complain all that much because chapter 4 isn't that much better either. Why do they find it so necessary to make chapter 3 and 4 the worst out of all of them? The only thing I can say about chapter 4 that it did better than chapter 3 is the whole that it filled in the gaps for Naho and one of the new characters, Sayaka, which I actually kind of liked. Other than that, though, I don't really care about this episode either. It only filled in the gaps, and that's the only thing good about this. There's also very, very unnecessary scenes that, like, have nothing to do with anything about Heavenly Host whatsoever. But now I should probably talk about Naho and what she did. Naho basically tricked everyone with the Sachiko Ever After charm, aka the demon ritual, where she basically instead it said to chant the amount how many people are doing the charm instead of how many people are doing the charm plus one, and that one is Hachiko. And I mean, it kind of shows why she did it, because she was in love with her best friend, Kibiki, who she also killed, so take that however you want. For a chapter on its own, it probably tried less to be scary than chapter 3 did. But unlike chapter 3, the main scares actually kind of work in the scenario. As I said, the gameplay in this game could result in very bad, and the visuals don't work because you don't see anything happening. So basically, this whole game relies on voice acting, and how do the voice actors do? Freaking amazing. These are some of the best video game voice actors I've ever heard. Like their screams of pain are actually very realistic of what's happening. Yeah, Naho is also kind of a very obsessed person, and that's why she did the whole thing. Not that I like it in any way, shape, or form. But after 10 years, I finally get into the school. Not that I could really care, because literally almost nothing has happened this entire point. I will say, though, the time in the school is actually kind of scary,
And the ending is definitely the most depressing out of all of them. Basically, you have to hide in the locker while some other girl is being tortured. And the voice actor for that girl, who I think is Nana, I'm not sure, is very, very good. Like, this isn't to sound creepy, but her screams and pain, they work so well. Like, this isn't sounding creepy, but, like, they're good voice actors. They're very talented, they know what they're doing, and it all just works. And yeah, the ending of this chapter also is very scary. Basically, Sayaka is very hungry, very tired, so she just collapses on the floor and is dragged away to the torture room, which is kind of very scary, actually, not gonna lie. Just one question. What is it up with Corpse Party and urination? Like, it's so annoying. Next up is Chapter 5, which in fairness is a huge step up from Chapter 3 and 4. However, let me just say this. The ending in this chapter is very, 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 very bad. Like, it's not even a cliffhanger. It's just boring. It leaves no room for suspense. No room for, oh my gosh, what happened? It's just so, the ending is so disappointing. Like, I don't like the ending. I don't appreciate the ending. I don't appreciate the point of the ending, and I just don't like it. This time the whole game focuses on Morishige, which is probably the most complex of the four dead characters, as his need for dead people that turn him on. This isn't me sounding rude or obnoxious in any way. It's just me making a joke out of it. Now the commentary while I did say this mainly focuses on Morishige, we also get some scenes with another character, Mitsuki and Fukuroi. And yes, I know it's called Fukuroi or Fukuroi, but I'm calling it Fukuroi because it's close enough. So stop complaining about what I name it and let me play the game how I want it, you females. Now the bad endings in this one are also very good. Also, some of them are bad, but for the most part, they're usually very good. And I will say that this chapter made me appreciate Morishige's character more. But for scares in general, for the true ending, I guess it's kind of okay. I mean, it's not awful, but it's nothing to brag about. Especially, especially nothing as good as the chapter and chapter 2, 6, and 8 horror scariness in the true endings are way much more scarier than chapter 5. Now, in general, this chapter isn't scary at all. I just I'm just fine with it. Like, it doesn't show any flashbacks of any points, which I like. I'm fine with it. All I want is just a very scary game, and like the scares in this game work well. Now, when Morishige and Mitsuki and Fukuroi um, meet up, I will say I kind of lost a bit of my attention towards this chapter. No, I didn't dislike it in any regard. I just saying that the story kind of lost track after that. The main thing scary is a character called Emmy, which we'll know more about in Chapter 7, freaking the heck out. Now, a kind of scary thing in this ending is when Kizami meets up with Fukuroi and Mitsuki around the end of the chapter, and that is very scary because Kizami also kills Fukuroi, and then Mitsuki also gets killed. In the end, Mitsuki is able to run away from Fukuroi and able to kind of live, but not really. Now, this kind of fills in the gaps of how Kazami knew some events, kind of like the hammer-wielding psychopath in the game. Next up is Chapter 7, Chapter 6, which is by far the scariest ending out of all of these. You play as Yuka, and I think this takes place as one of the bad endings in Blood Covered, because I remember this ending fondly. At the end of the bad ending in this ending, Ayumi actually murders Naomi. At the beginning, Yuka is being tortured by Kizami, like, for a long while. And, like, Yuka is almost about to die, but doesn't. Now, while I did say this has the scariest true ending out of all of them, it also has some major flaws, like some bad endings. The bad endings are the most boring things in history ever. Also, can I just ask, why is Kizami so intense on trying to rape Yuka? Like, it's so stupid. Like, to just murder her. It doesn't have to be so, like, stupid. But, also, this is also a very quick chapter, also. This also stands as a point of Kazami giving us some Kazami backstory of him trying to molest a child. Yes, I know I'm being fake here, but trust me, I am trying to be funny with all my might, but this game, it just sucks my energy dry. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just the least entertaining. Like, I can entertain myself a whole lot more once I get to Blood Drive. So at the end, Yuka stupidly goes to the bomb shelter for very stupid reasons. Like, very dumb, very annoying. And, like, I wasn't... I know it was kinda like she didn't have a huge choice, but, like, I mean, I didn't like it. And then for some reason, Sachiko joins your party at the beginning, which is also very fucked up. Also, can I just say, Yuko, out of all the 5 survivors, has had it the most rough. I mean, she's had to pee herself, almost get chased by a mad psychopath and die, get stabbed by Sachiko multiple times, and then in an alternate ending, die. But yeah, this chapter is very scary because having Sachiko in your party is one of the scariest things imaginable, and no one with their right mind should have wanted to do that. I mean, this does make Yuka kind of adult and an idiot, but whatever. But seeing just her in my party scares the shit out of me. Literal shit out of me. In fact, this is one of the scariest things out of any game I've ever seen in my entire life. Um, Also, I have to say, um, while I was doing this review, I kind of locked my door so I wouldn't get scared because yeah, this scares me. By the way, Sachiko pretends Yuka's her big sister, which scares the heck out of me because Yuka looks like she's a 5-year-old, and somehow Sachiko looks somehow older, which she technically is. For those of you who are wondering what happens in this ending, just look at this picture. Yeah, I don't think I need to say any more. Next up is Chapter 7, which is probably the best of the worst. I mean, if I had to rank these chapters, I'd probably rank Chapter 7 number 5. And I'll go into the rest of the ranking in the end of the video. Basically, this chapter is a whole bunch of nonsense scariness, which fills in some gaps of why Kazami went insane to begin with. And I kind of like that because I'm always like, how the hell did Kazami get to this point? Like he couldn't have been insane from the get-go. Basically, Kazami was accused of killing someone when he didn't. He was called a murderer, and Kazami kind of liked it. Now, I call this oh, fuck, I can't speak. Stupidity on both ends, Kazami liking being called a murderer, and Kazami being called a murderer, because he didn't murder anyone. He wanted to prove a point that someone was dead, and he was already dead to begin with, so it didn't matter that much. Much like Chapter 4, there's no bad ending towards this game, and it does not scare me whatsoever. It's just kind of a little bit just out there. It's a very basic bad ending. Now, story-wise, I kind of like this, but I also feel like this is also a very quick chapter, mainly because the Team Gris wanted to go to Chapter 8 so super fast, and Chapter 8, I mean, they just needed to slow down. Like, we'll get to Chapter 8 when we get to it, and just enjoy the ride. And they clearly didn't. Because, like, Corpse Party Book of Shadows is by far the most low budget out of all these games. I mean, out of all of these, they filled in the gaps the most on this, and I think that's what they tried to do. Next up is Chapter 8, which is by far the creepiest out of all these games. Out of all these chapters. The whole chapter is about Ayumi and Naomi trying to resurrect all their dead friends, and basically the plan going more haywire than actually doing this. Also amping up the sequel to this called Blood Drive, where it's actually a sequel instead of Lion King 1.5. And while this chapter has no bad endings, I swear to God, this chapter creeped me the heck out. Basically because all of the atmosphere, and like they didn't even have this going to the school. So Chapter 3 actually could have been successful. But I mean, Chapter 8 did this in a good way. But I have a question. Why is a abandoned place and a horror place like this, like the Shinozaki estate that is involved with Sachiko and all the others still there? Why not just like nuke it or some shit? Why Chapter 8 works so well is because of all the horror aspects of it, while not even being in the school itself. This is why this is a very successful chapter, because not only is this talking about what actually happened, it's talking about it in a very scary setting. This is what I feel like Book of Shadows could have done best. What if Naomi and Ayumi went to the Shinozaki estate, and that was the whole entire game? That would be amazing. That would be a good game. Now, I'm not saying this game is not good. I'll get to the rating in a minute. But this game had potential, and it's disappointing. Oh yeah, and then Ayumi and Naomi find a molestation book, because that face on the book is so creepy. It also reminds me of that stupid cartoon with the talking book. Anyone remember that? It was from Nickelodeon. The only problem I have with this one is the ending, which is by far one of the worst endings. Mainly because Ayumi's sister dies in this, which we never got a lot of like stuff to care about her from, so why would we? But now it's time for my verdict on this game. This verdict on this game is not that it's bad, it's very good. In fact, I give it a 7 out of 10. However, the problems with this game is that it's so boring. Like, I swear, Blood Drive, I'm gonna make a lot of entertaining stuff about this, but for this game, it's just boring at some points. That it just doesn't work in this type of setting. So why did they make this game? I have no idea. Like, I like the game. Would I suggest you buy it? Yes, if you know the problems with this game. I hope you do. So be sure not to be an idiot when you play this game and complain that it's bad or something. It's not, it just has a ton of flaws.